going to talk about how to make offers today. So we're now moving towards the end of the conversion secrets section inside the code. So we talked about how to qualify leads and how that's so important to setting them up for the offer process and to find out if they are a real seller now. And if they're a real seller now, are they a possible wholesale deal? And then we talked about underwriting, because that's so important when it gets to the point where you're going to move into the offer process with these leads, whether you're going to make the offer in person at an appointment or you're going to make the offer over the phone with a call back. And so now today, I want to get into the next stage, which is making that offer. And so the first point actually that I want to make with that is that you don't always make an offer. In fact, it's actually only about 1 in 3 leads, statistically speaking, that you're going to make an offer on if you're following our conversion secrets process. Now, the reason why that is, again, it comes down to there's 2 big questions with any lead, right? The first question is, are they a real seller now? And what that means is, are they actually looking to sell? And if they are actually looking to sell, are they looking to sell now? Or are they just looking to sell maybe in the future? Okay. And that's so important to understand, because if they are not looking to actually sell, they're just calling because they're curious what you do, or curious what an offer would be, or curious what their house is worth, etc., right? Then you don't want to get into the offer process, because typically they're going to go, oh my gosh, no, why would I ever sell my house that cheap? And you're never going to hear from them again, even if in the future they are a real seller. And that's kind of similar to where even if they are a real seller, but they're not ready to sell it for, maybe a month or 3 months or 6 months, same type of thing. Sellers go through kind of a seller cycle, right? Where I'm thinking about selling my house and I want that full Zillow price, and I want to actually get that price in my pocket. And then later they're like, okay, we're actually going to put the house up. And we start doing market research and we start talking to realtors, and we realize, oh man, I might not actually get that Zillow price or that high retail price. Or even if I do, I'm not going to walk away with that because I'm going to have some fees. I'm going to have to put a couple bucks into the house, etc. Right? So until they get to that stage, they might not even be willing to hear that part, let alone an offer for even less. And so if somebody's not ready to sell the house right now, and you hit them with an offer at, let's just say, for example, 120,000, and they're looking at Zillow going, Zillow's 200,000, right? And then in 3 or 6 months, they're ready to sell right now. They're going to be thinking of you as that moron that they talk to, and they're never going to call you back. They're going to have no interest in talking to you. That's much different from when they call and you decipher that, they are going to sell in the future, but they're not ready right now. And you tell them, look, we've actually got some money to place right now. I'm not sure what I'd be able to pay for this in 3 months or 6 months. So a lot of times we'll just ask them, are you just kind of curious what your house is worth? And if they say, yeah, more or less, excuse me, then we'll just kind of tell them, well, hey, it looks like houses are kind of going for about this in your neighborhood if they're all fixed up and remodeled, etc. And usually they'll be like, okay, thanks. And you can give them a retail price. Not a big deal. You're not making an offer, right? So if it's the example of that $200,000 Zillow house, you might just tell them, it looks like in your neighborhood, houses are selling for anywhere between 150 and 200,000. The upper end of that, they're super fixed up, maybe take a little longer to sell, etc. The lower end, those houses maybe need a little bit more work, etc. And they're usually not going to want to hear a lot more than that. They're going to be like, okay, that sounds great. And then you tell them, look, we're going to be looking to buy another house here in a few months. And so why don't you give me a call when you're actually ready to sell, right? I wouldn't emphasize actually. They might think that's rude, but you might say, when you're ready to sell in a few months, call us back. We're going to do a full in-depth analysis on your property so that we can figure out the most we can pay for you at that time. And they might say, well, can you do that now? I'm kind of curious. And you say, well, here's the problem. If I do that right now, that number could be very different in 3 months because my cash situation might be different in 3 months. The market could turn, etc. So you really don't want to make an offer, right? So part of that whole qualification process, we talked a lot about this 2 modules ago. You can go back and watch that inside the code, is figuring out, are they ready to sell right now? Because if they're ready to sell right now, right, now you've got something you can work with. They're willing to accept that, oh yeah, I might sell it for this, but I'm only going to walk away with this. Or I might not sell it for this, actually, based on this comp, and based on I need to fix this and do that. Maybe I'm here, and then I'd still walk away with here. So the point is, when a seller's actually ready to sell, they're going to be much more willing to let you educate them, and they're going to be much more understanding of the process of selling and the expenses that go along with selling. They're just thinking about maybe selling at some point in the future. You know, we're all humans. We want to think the best case scenario. So it's kind of like this. If you've got a car, you have no interest in selling your car, and I say, hey, I want to buy your car, right? What are you going to say? Well, yeah, I mean, I'd maybe sell my car. How much would you give me for it? Because you're curious. But if I say a trade-in value to you, you're going to go, why would I take that? My car's worth $15,000. Why would I sell it to you for $7,000? Right? But that's much different than if you're trying to buy a new car and you're like, hey, the bank won't give me a new loan because I got to sell this other car and I don't have time to sell it. I'm trying to, I love this car. I'm trying to buy this car today. What do you give me for mine? I'm trying to make it work, right? Same thing with houses, right? This is how cars operate or dealerships operate on trade-ins. It's kind of the same thing with houses, right? Like if they're not ready to make a decision right now, they don't want to hear this low price, right? They want to hear a high price. But when they're actually ready to sell, everything changes. So the number one thing you're looking for is, are they a real seller now? Now, let's say they are a real seller now, and they say, yes, we're ready to sell right now. If we liked the price, we would sell it right now. But then you start to understand that they're unrealistic about price. You know, Zillow's 200 and they want 220. And you're looking at the comps going, 200 is probably stretching it. Your house is dated and needs some work. The ones at 200 are fully remodeled. Like, right, you're probably not going to make an offer on that person either. And so, and we're going to get into them here in a minute, a little bit more, but guys, it all comes down to what's their situation and how are they thinking on price. If their situation is such that, yes, they're a real seller and they're a real seller now, right? Then you've got something to work with. So even if they're unrealistic on price, you can at least start to educate them on price. And if they just don't want to hear it, you probably just need to follow up with them because maybe they need to hear it from somebody else. Maybe they need to do a little due diligence and go, oh, I guess he was right. He did know what he was talking about, right? So you're listening for situation and price. Now, once in a while, not super often, honestly, but once in a while it goes the other way. And they're offering a super great price, but their situation isn't ready to sell yet. So you might go, what do you want for your house? Oh, I don't know. I'd probably be happy with around 150. And you pull up the house and you realize like it's worth 250 and you're like, gosh, right? It's such a hot lead. And then you start talking to them, well, when are you looking to sell? Well, we're not really sure. When do you want to move? We're not really sure. Where are you moving? We're not really sure. A lot of times what that means is they haven't really started that process. So they're not going to commit, even if you go, well, hey, I'll give you 150. And they're going to go, well, that's great. You're willing to give me your price, but I'm not really ready to sign yet. I'm not really sure. We just started thinking about selling. And what's going to happen is that typically that person, when they do decide, oh, okay, we're going to move next month, they're going to do a little more research and they're going to go, oh, my house is worth a lot more than 150. And now they're going to want a higher price, right? So the reason I say that is the commitment is so important. Don't just get hung up on price, even if they're offering you a good price. Right? You want to find out, well, are you actually committed to selling it right now? Right? So you need two things to get a wholesale deal. You need them to be committed to sell, and you need them to be willing to sell it with that commitment at a price point that you can justify as an investor and make sense of putting it under contract so you can resell that deal and get paid on. Okay? So guys, by the numbers. I've been doing this for years. We've closed hundreds and hundreds of transactions, actually over 1,000 going back to the beginning of my career. And guys, if the numbers are going to play out, right, that basically 1 in 3 leads you're going to make an offer on. Now, you might do 4 or 5 leads in a row you don't make an offer on, right? And then 2 in a row you make an offer on. It's kind of funny how, but the numbers will pretty much shake out if you're doing it correctly, that you're going to make about 1 offer per 3 leads. Now, I know this is a little bit opposite to the way a lot of gurus teach. A lot of gurus are going to say, hey, make an offer on anything, on every single property. It's a numbers game. Just play the numbers and you're going to get a deal. Well, yeah, you might get 1 in 100 deals that way. Right? But what about the other 99 leads that might have been a deal in a month or in 3 months or 6 months? Well, they're never going to talk to you again because you made them a low offer a long time ago. Does that make sense? So you would rather, if they're not ready to sell yet, okay, then you're going to kind of give them hope for gain and set them up to call you back when they are ready to sell. It's going to be the best sale of your life. I'm going to try to pay you as much as possible. There's going to be no fees. You're going to be able to pick the date. It's going to be awesome. Now they're willing to call you because when they actually are ready to sell in 3 months, they're like, oh, I wonder, do I have that guy's number still? That was way easier than having to go with the realtor. Let's see what he'll pay before we do anything else. They'll call you, and now they're actually ready to sell. And now when you tell them, well, yeah, I know Zillow's this, or you might have thought it's worth this, but realistically, if you were to sell it to realtor, it's going to be here, and then you need to pick some stuff up, so it's going to be here. I can be right here, and you don't have to do any of that. It's just as is, pick a date, right? And they're going to be more willing to hear that number that's down here when they've when they've actually looked at all the facts involved, because now they're a serious seller and they're like, well, that's not such a big difference. Whereas if they're just thinking about selling it and they're stuck on that high number, they think that's what they're going to get. You come in here, you're like, that's a huge gap, right? Never going to talk to you again. So guys, now let's talk about, that's kind of if the situation is not there yet, what do you do? Now let's talk about if the situation is there, meaning they are a real seller now, but they're not realistic on price. Then what do you do? Well, then what you want to do is you want to do a takeaway. Okay, so let's say you go through that qualification sheet. They say, we know we're moving out of state next month. We've already got our place where we're moving. We're going to sell this house, but we want $220,000. You look at it and you go, I can get $140 on this house. Retail's $190 or $200. They want $220. What? I'm going to call that person back and I'm going to say, hey, I'm really bummed out. It sounded like a perfect timing. You've got a house we'd like to buy and it's in the area we're looking to buy. And it sounds like you're definitely moving next month. So, I mean, you're going to sell this house, but unfortunately, we're going to be a long ways apart here. So, I don't want to make what I would say, let me backtrack. What I would say there is, hey, I'm sorry, I can't even get close to your 220 offer. I just want to be realistic with you. I think even if you were to sell it with a realtor, it'd be a lot of time and hassle and energy, and you'd walk away with a lot less than what you sold it for going with that realtor route, because there's going to be a lot of expenses on closing costs and what the realtors and what the buyers want, so I would be nowhere near your price. Now, if they go, well, that's okay. I mean, what's your offer, right? And they start coming back towards you, right? Now you're like, depending on how much lower you are, you might be like, well, my offer probably would offend you. And they might go, no, that's all right. You're not going to offend me. What do you want? That's an indication that they're just kind of bluffing. Everybody wants as much as possible, right? So now if they come towards you, then you could go, well, look, I'm at 140, right? And then I go, oh gosh, no, that's too low. Or could you come up to 145 or whatever they're going to say, right? But you want to see how they react to that. So the point is, guys, if the situation's there, but they're unrealistic on price, you want to kind of do a pull away and be like, unfortunately, I couldn't get to your price. And if they just say, okay, no worries, right, and they hang up, you're okay with that today. Now you're still going to call them in, a few days and in a week, because what might happen? They might talk to some realtors, they might talk to other buyers, and they might do research online, and they start to realize, well, wait a minute, I'm not going to walk away with 220, based on this example we're using. And then they might call back and go, hey, I realized I was a little high on my thinking of 220. What could you offer? You might go, well, I'm nowhere near that. And they might go, well, yeah, that's okay. We kind of understand that now that we've done some more research, and they're starting to close the gap. But early on, if they don't even want to hear, if you're like, I'm nowhere near that, and they don't even want to hear it, right? They're not really coming towards you. You're still going to follow up. You're always going to follow up, right? Even if the situation's not there yet, you're going to follow up until the situation is there. Just stay in contact with them, okay? But if the situation is not there yet, okay, follow up. And if the situation is there, but they're unrealistic on price, then you're going to do the takeaway, okay? And if they go, well, maybe I'm a little bit flexible, right? Then you can start to educate them. So if they're coming towards you and you're not sure, should I make an offer or should I not? And they're kind of coming towards you, when in doubt, make the offer, okay? But a lot of times they might go, oh yeah, no, that's way too low. Be okay with that and follow up with them and tell them with confidence why your offer's where it is. Well, I know you want 220 for your house, but nothing sold for more than 190, 200, whatever that number is. And those are retail houses. That one was updated. You told me yours wasn't. This one's, is decked out. Yours is not, needs some work. And then even if you were to get that top price, you're going to have to put all that money in to get it to look like that one. Then you're going to pay realtors. So realistically, I know you're trying to get as much as for your house, but don't be afraid, guys, to walk them through retail. So with this example, I might tell them, hey, to get 200 on your house, which is what Zillow says, because Zillow's comparing it to full remodels, you're going to have to make it look like the houses that have sold for 200,000 in your area, what they look like. And based on what you told me about your house and what these other ones are looking at, you're going to have to do flooring, paint. You might have to do some stuff to the roof or put a new roof, maybe windows, right? Depending on the house, it might need more or less, right? But you start painting all this stuff and you're like, that's going to cost tens of thousands of dollars. So 220 is out the door. It would never appraise for 220 because nothing's sold in your neighborhood for that. So no bank's going to loan that much. And if you were to get a cash buyer, they're not going to pay more than anything else is sold for. That'd be kind of silly. So, 200 is kind of the top of the market right now for your neighborhood. And, it'd probably take $30,000 for you to get to 200. So really, if you could sell it right now for 170, you're getting basically full asking price without having to do anything. But even if you were to get that full asking price as is at 170, to get that top of the market, you'd still have to pay realtor fees and closing costs and all that kind of stuff. So you might be walking away at 155, 10% less than the 170 is, 153. Well, I'm able to offer 140. I'm able to get kind of close to that. You have no stress. There's not going to be people tromping through your house. You can pick your own move out date. You don't have to do anything. So you're closing the gap, right? So going back, if they weren't even ready to sell, they're not going to hear any of that. If they are ready to sell, but they're still way on price, you're going to kind of do the takeaway, and they're like, well, what's your offer, right? And you're like, well, I'm way, just in your mind, you're going, I need to offer 140, and they're saying they want 220. You're going, well, I'm way lower than the 220. I don't want to offend you. It's okay. You won't offend me. Okay. Well, I'm at 140. 140, that sounds ridiculous. Now you're going to start to educate them. Well, I know it kind of does because you were thinking 220, but the top of the market comps are 200, not 220. So if we go at 200 as the top point, and those houses are completely remodeled, and you described yours as kind of original, and it was built in the 90s. You're probably looking at 30, 40,000 to make it look like that house. So now instead of being at 200, you're at 160, and then you've got realtor fees and commissions and all that kind of stuff. Typically 10 is about 10%. So now you're down to 145. So I'm almost there, and you can avoid all that hassle, right? But they're willing to let you educate them. So now, guys, let's say that you qualify a lead and you determine they're a real seller right now and they're somewhat realistic on price. I had one this morning, and she goes, or actually I think this was yesterday, and I was desking this deal. Sales guy brought it to me, and the seller wanted, she said, well, my house is, Zillow says it's worth 212, but I'd be happy for 180. Now, here's her situation. She bought the house in 2010, so it's went up in value for 9 years. Okay. She relocated out of state 5 years ago. And since then, she let family move into it and just cover her mortgage. Okay. And she's out of state now. So she's like, the house, it kind of needs some repairs. A couple things have happened since they've been living there. I don't really want to come out of pocket to fix them. House has gone up in value. I'd like to get that money out. Right. So she's going to be crushing it no matter what. She's out of state. She doesn't want to deal with realtors. She doesn't want to wait. She doesn't want to have to kick her family out, but she does want to turn it into cash. It's a perfect situation for a wholesale deal. And I'm like, if we can make all these numbers work and your family could just stay there, at least until after we bought it, would that work? And she's like, absolutely. So this is a dream situation, right? So now it's just, is she realistic on price? Well, she's telling me right off the bat, I go, what do you want for the house? And she goes, well, Zillow's 210, but I think I'd take 180, right? Obviously that shows she's kind of realistic. Doesn't mean I can pay 180, okay? And then after, right off the top of my head, I even, towards the end of the call, I told her, 180 is probably retail. I know that 210, that's probably for like a super updated house. And I know you said you haven't done anything to it since you bought it 10 years ago, and there's a couple of small repairs and stuff. So realistically, 180 is probably more of a full retail number, and you might even have to put a couple bucks to get into that. So are you kind of flexible on that number? She goes, yeah, I've got a little bit of flexibility, right? So I know with this seller, I can offer 140 or maybe even 120. And she's probably she might go, wow, that's a lot lower than I thought. But she's going to listen because she's actually ready to make a decision. And she might not be willing to take that number today, but if I say it with confidence and explain why, and she does her homework and goes, well, the realtor did tell me they could get me a little bit more, but they said I need to get the tenants out. I need to fix a couple things and blah, blah. And she might go, maybe this is the issue. Just take the quick sale. I'm still getting a lot of money in my pocket, still getting more than I paid for it, etc. And she's happy. So guys, when that happens, right, they're committed, they're realistic on price, you're ready to make your offer. And again, if they're not really unrealistic on price, but you do the takeaway and they come towards you, then you're ready to make your offer. So sometimes what I'll do, if they're unrealistic on price, but they have a good situation, I'll call them back and I'll just say, yeah, I started to do my homework and there's no way we could get to your price, and they'll go, well, where would you be? And sometimes I'll go, well, I'm a lot lower than that, and they'll go, well, that's okay. I mean, obviously my dream price would be 220, but let me know where you're at. And then I might go, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Maybe not. If I sneeze here in a minute, I feel it coming on. I'm battling a little thing here, guys. And they might say, well, that's okay. Tell me what your offer is, right? And you go, okay, well, let me call you back then. I need to do a little more homework. I started to look. I realized I was going to be nowhere near your 220, and I wanted to call you before I wasted a bunch of your time and tell you that. And they'll go, okay. And you go, so let me call you back in 20 minutes. I'm going to get a real number now, okay? So whether it's that, where you did the takeaway and they came towards you, or right on the front end, like the example I just gave, you realize this is a real seller. They are somewhat realistic on price, or at least open to being educated because they're a real seller. Here's what you want to do. You're going to do it in 2 pencils. So before you make your offer, you're going to do what we call first pencil. And we talked about this a lot with the underwriting module last week. And I said we'd be talking more about it this week. So here we are. So if you didn't watch underwriting, go back and watch underwriting. Super important. And if, in fact, watching all these videos in order will be super valuable for you and for your career. But what you're going to do is first pencil. Now, you're getting ready to make your offer. So what first pencil is you pull up the comparables, right? And what you're looking for, excuse me, is you're looking for the lowest comps, and you're looking for all the ammunition you can use to justify the lowest offer possible. Now, are they going to accept that low offer? Zillow's 200 and you offer them 120? Probably not, right? Once in a while they will, which is why when people tell you just make tons of offers, once in a while you're going to get a deal. That's the once in a while, right? But it's going to be really tough to build a business on those numbers, right? Because you're going to do so much marketing, talk to so many people in between one of those 200 leads, right? You're going to get burnt out. You're going to spend all your time and money, and it's not going to be profitable. But if you're doing marketing, those will come, right? But those are the exceptions. How do you get all the other deals that you should be getting in between the home runs, right? Well, you're going to get your ammunition and get all that stuff, and you go, well, that's way too low. Okay, now what your job is to do, you've gotten the lowest comps possible, you've got your ammunition, okay? You're going to call them back, you're going to touch on value proposition, you're going to touch on your ammunition points, and you're going to make the offer, and then you're going to shut up. Okay, so let me rewind for a minute and go back to that. So now we've qualified a seller. Let's just use the lady I was talking about. So she moved out of state. She bought it 10 years ago when the values were a lot lower. She's going to get a bunch of cash either way. She's done with the house. She doesn't want to put money into it to fix these couple of things for the people living there. She just wants to get the cash and be done with it. Perfect situation. I'm going to call her back and go. And she'd said she wanted Zillow was 210, but she'd maybe take 180 or was even flexible on that. I'm about to offer 120, right? So I'm going to call her back and I'm going to say, hey, hi, Miss Seller, it's Josh. So I did a little bit of homework here, and here's where I'm at, and I already was kind of concerned about this. I know you said you wanted 180 and that sounded high, but wanted to get my bearings straight, not get ahead of myself. But here's a couple things to keep in mind. I'm going to make you an offer here in a minute, but I want you to remember my offer is a net offer, which means this offer, if you accept it, is actually what you're getting in your pocket. So if you were to sell at retail, this same offer would probably be 15% higher, but you'd be walking away with the same number. But you're not going to have to pay all those costs. You don't have to pay realtor fees and closing costs or anything like that. So take that into consideration. It's like I'm offering you more, but you just don't have to pay all that stuff. So we're talking apples to apples here. Okay. Now also, here's a couple things I pointed out. There was one comp in your neighborhood recently sold for 140. Time out. Now, maybe that was an off-market sale, right? But time in. There was one that sold for 140. It's about the same size as yours. And so they were walking away with, and then typically it's about 10 to 15% as far as expenses. So 140, they're probably walking away with around 125. There was another comp here. It was a little bit bigger. It took 4 months to sell, and it only sold for 149. And it had a pool. Yours doesn't have a pool, or it had whatever that yours doesn't have, right? You found a couple things that you can use for ammunition. And you go, so with all that being said, this offer, it's as is. You don't have to do anything. Based on some of these other sales, I'm able to offer you 120, which I think is a really good offer. Now, just don't say anything. Once you get to don't talk forever, right? Don't be like, well, there was this comp, there was this comp, and there was this comp, right? You want to just touch on the value proposition, which is, remember, this is as is, no fees. So this is as if I was paying you more money, but you don't have to pay those expenses. And here's the thing. I saw some other comps that were much lower than the 180. So I have you've got me at the right time. It's exactly the house I want to buy, and I can pay 120. Don't say anything. Let them respond. Now, here's the biggest thing, guys. How do they react? Do they say, no way, that's way too low? In which case, maybe you need to say, okay, well, how far too low is it? And you might go, well, I wouldn't come down any lower than 170. You're going to start to educate. Well, I know you want 170, but, did you hear me? I just said this other comp sold at 140 and 150, and those houses were a little bigger than yours, blah, blah, blah. If they don't want to hear it, right, maybe you just need to follow up with them. But if she goes, maybe now she goes to 180, you offer 120, and she goes, wow, that's really low. Well, yeah, but, take into consideration, there's a lot of sales that have sold considerably lower than 180, maybe even bigger than yours. And those people had to go through all the hassle and time and wait for offers and have people coming through their house. And then they were paying fees. So they're probably walking away with about the same, maybe a smidge more. How close to that could you do? So after you give an offer, what you want to do is you want to get them committed to an asking price that's as close to yours as possible. Okay. So if she goes, wow, that's way too low. Gosh, I could maybe do, I was thinking I'd get at least 140. I told you 180, that'd be my dream price as is, but 140 is really what I was trying to get. Guys, you're never going to even hear the number in their head if they're a real seller, what they were actually thinking they might get until you hit them with an offer. In fact, in her head, she might have been thinking, you know what, I know those 200 is probably a little high. My house needs a little bit of stuff, but I think I should get at least 180 for it. even after paying realtors and stuff, I could probably walk away with 150, 155, 160, right? So that same person, they still told you Zillow's 210, I'll take 180 because they want to see what you'll offer. And you offer 120 and she goes, no, there's no way I'd go less than like 150. And that might now be on the bottom side of what she had previously been thinking. If you would have offered her 150 or 160, you'd have been spinning your wheels. She'd have still been trying to get you to come up in price, and you'd have been offering too much in the first place. So even if you get the deal, you're going to cancel it later. So now getting to that third price is paramount. And like I said, they're never going to give you that third asking price until you give them an offer that typically is lower than what they thought they were going to get. So guys, you go back and watch the qualification video where I showed our 9-step process. There's first asking price at the beginning of the call. What do you want for the house? In this case, that'd be the 210. Well, Zillow says it's worth 210. And then at the end of the call, you've gotten some information on their house, found out maybe it's a little dated or maybe a couple things need fixed. Maybe there's tenants in there, which is going to affect being able to sell it at full retail, whatever. And you touch on that stuff and you go, but I'll buy it as is. You can pick the date. There's no fees. What would you take for a situation like that? And maybe they go, well, I know Zillow was the 210, but I'd probably take 180 for something like that. Now you hit them at the 120 and they come down to 140, 150, whatever, right? Okay. So now you're going to go back and you're going to do a second pencil. Now that you've gotten third asking price out of them. Now, if their third asking price is really close to your first pencil, you're probably just going to be like, okay. And you're going to move right into the getting their contract stage. Right? Because if you did your job right, you may offer super low based on the lowest price you could justify, and they're real close to that, it's probably a deal. But more often than not, they're still going to be at a price that's a little bit higher than a deal, right? Hopefully it's at least a mini deal, but you can still get it down more. So then what you're going to say is, okay, so let's say this lady, she said, Zillow's 210, I'd probably take 180. And then we go, well, that's not, at the end of the call, we said, well, that sounds really high. And that sounds kind of like retail based on your condition. Blah, blah, blah. I'm going to do some homework. I mean, do you have some flexibility? She goes, yeah, I'm flexible on that. We call back. We offer her 120. She goes, yeah, I was hoping to walk away with at least 160. But I mean, that did make sense what you were saying about the comparables and not having to pay fees and stuff. I mean, but I wouldn't want to take any less than 150. So now I'm going to solidify that. Okay, well, 150 sounds really high, but I don't think I'll be able to do that. But hang on, let me take a closer look now. I knew we couldn't do the 180. I think we need to be closer to my 120. Let me take a second look. Now, sometimes if you know 150 is way too high, you might stay stronger a little bit here and go, look, I know you want 150, but remember I said this comparable here sold for 140? That was retail and that house was bigger or whatever, right? But if you're like, yeah, I mean, I think this is actually pretty close to maybe what I could wholesale it for, right? Now you're going to want to go back into a second pencil. So you're going to say, let me take a closer look again. I don't know if I can get there. If I could, would you be ready to sign a contract today? Yeah, Josh, if you get to 150, I'll sign a contract today. Okay, so now, you're going to be around in 20 minutes. Let me talk to my partner real quick. I don't think we can get up there. But, let me see if I can convince him. I'm the one that's going to be driving out to the property, and I love the location. The other one we're looking at is a way better deal based on the price, but I'm going to be having to drive out there. I'd probably rather go to yours. Let me see if I can get him on board. I don't know if we can come up that much, but let me see. Now, you might, when you say that, they might tell you something that leads you to believe maybe they'll take even less than 150. Or they'll tell you they're firm at that. Either way, so if they think maybe there's a little more flexibility, or you think they're not coming down any more less than 150, now you're going to look at a second underwrite and you're going to actually look at the real value and you're going to go, can I make money at 150? Well, if you can't, but you realize, hey, if I can get it under 140, I've got a deal. Now you're going to call back and you're going to keep educating her and negotiating and try to get her down more than 10 grand. If you can get her down 20 grand, great. You might make 10. If you can get her down 12 grand, great. Tie it up. You'll maybe make 2, or maybe you'll get lucky and make a little bit more than that. Or worst case, if you're wrong, you'll renegotiate, right? As long as you've got your contingencies in place, which we'll talk about when we get to the contract section of the code, which is coming up here pretty soon. So guys, the whole point, guys, is you do the first pencil to position yourself for the lowest possible offer to find out what's the least they'll take. Once you've gotten that, then you decide, okay, that's the least they'll probably take right now. And you can try to educate them and negotiate them down a little bit more and see if you can, based on where you can get them, don't go back and forth forever. Just, okay, now you really know where they're at, right? And a real seller is going to get to their third asking price. If they're not ready to sell for 3 or 6 months, they're going to be still stuck on that high price anyways, which is the whole point of, if they're unrealistic on price, take away, or if they're not ready to sell yet, don't get into all this stuff. But if they're ready to sell right now, right, and they're realistic, they're going to listen to you as you educate them. They're going to be like, yeah, that is true. Yeah, I did talk to a realtor and he did kind of say this, right? So you can have a lot of things to your advantage to close that gap. And on the second pencil, you take their third asking price and you say, can I make money on this or not? If you can't, then you continue to negotiate and educate. If you can't close that gap, you stay right on top of them, because it's probably only a few days or a couple weeks before they talk to other people and decide, hey, you're the best offer. Now, maybe they're just trying to squeeze a bunch of wholesalers and get the most money possible. That's when there's multiple offers, right, on the table. And in that case, it gets a little trickier. Sometimes you got to position yourself as to why maybe these other people aren't real. Maybe they're going to cancel, whatever. And that's why they should take your offer. Okay. So it can be anytime there's more competition, they're getting other wholesalers' offers. It gets a little tougher, right? But the key, guys, is you're going to get that third asking price. And on the second pencil, then you're going to go back to your drawing board. Can I make money on this or not? If you can, or if it's close, maybe you're going to tie it. You're probably going to tie it up now. Try to get it sold. And if you can't get it sold, come back to them. Okay. Sometimes you'll look at it now and go, well, first pencil, I thought, I wanted to get this at 120. I know that would have been a home run. Second pencil, she's now down to say 150. And you look at it and you go, I probably can make a buck, because based on my ammunition, this looks good, but based on real numbers, I'm taking an in-depth analysis. Wow. I mean, as is, maybe this thing could go for 190. She's at 140, 150, whatever she's at. Man, it's kind of a smidge deal, but that's where you make that decision. Okay. So you don't just, what do you want? And then, oh, can I make money at that? And then call it a day. No, you ask them what they want. Then you get the ammunition to make the lowest offer possible. You hit them with that lower offer. You see how close to that you'll get. And then that number is what you look at, and you actually analyze the values real in depth. And you go, can I get to that price or not? Is it worth tying up or not? And if it's close, you're going to keep trying to negotiate and educate with them. And if you can't get there, you're going to stay right on top of this hot lead. Okay. Now, if you decide you look at that and you go, yeah, this is a deal. I can make money on this. You're going to go right into the next stage, which is net it, which we're going to talk about more in the next module. Or you're going to follow up. If they're not there, but they're close, you're going to follow up with them. You can say, you know what, you might even say, I encourage you to, maybe talk to a realtor. Cause I know, you're stuck on that, 170, but I think that's, what you would sell it for retail. So I think if you talk to a couple of realtors, they're probably going to tell you to list it for 170 and ask them what they charge. Ask them what the expenses are. And then they might call you in a couple of days going, yeah, I talked to a couple of realtors and they did say it was probably around 170. And they said they charge this and it'd take a couple months and I should fix this. And so, and that gap is closing. So guys, you want to close the gap from retail to wholesale, which you're never going to be able to close the gap until they're really ready to sell. And then as you're closing that gap, take into consideration where the seller's at in their timeline, right? Because they might be a real seller in 2 months, ready to make a commitment today, but they haven't talked to anybody else. So you hit them at 140, they're thinking 200. They know they have a little bit of time left. They're a real seller now, and they're kind of letting you educate them, but they're like, yeah, I'm not going to take that big of a discount. They might just need to do some more research or talk to somebody else. So keep following up with them. Okay. And maybe hopefully they've already done some of that kind of stuff, or they're just happy with the number and you can get the deal right now. Okay. So then what do? You got to get that contract. Now you just say, okay, great. I'm going to send you a contract, review it, sign it, send it back to me whenever you get a chance. No, you get that fish in the boat. Because if you already have done, you've qualified them, you've done your first pencil, you hit them with that low offer, which your stomach was gut wrenching to call them an offer of 120 when they wanted 200, which is a feeling you should have. And they come down to 140, and then you're like, I don't think I can get there. And then you look and you're like, oh, maybe this is a small deal. You call them back, you get them down to 135, and you're like, this is a deal, right? Now you got to get that contract. Thank you. So now you got to get that contract. So you're not just like, let me send it to you, send it back, and you get a chance. No. You're like, hey, are you by a computer right now? Give me 5 or 10 minutes. I'm going to put together this contract. I'm going to send it to you. I'll call you as soon as I send it to you. We can go over on the phone real quick. And your goal would be to get them to sign it right away. So we're going to talk more in depth about this closing process, this netting it, okay, on the next video, guys. But I hope that you have some big takeaways from today on how to make an offer, when to make an offer. Now, that's the whole point.